The rain had been falling for 3 hours straight by the time I pulled the bus into the last stretch of Route 847, the windshield wipers beating their tired rhythm against the downpour. São Paulo at night, especially in December, could turn any street into a river, and tonight was no exception. The fluorescent lights inside the bus flickered as we rolled over another pothole, casting strange shadows across the worn seats. Only 4 passengers remained scattered throughout the vehicle, their faces illuminated by phone screens, lost in their own worlds as the city blurred past the rain-streaked windows. I've been driving this route for 17 years. 17 years of the same stops, the same faces cycling through seasons, the same potholes that the city promises to fix but never does. My name is Carlos, and I'm 53 years old, though my hands look older, weathered from gripping this steering wheel through countless shifts. People say I'm too soft for this job, that a bus driver in São Paulo needs thick skin and a short temper to survive. Maybe they're right. But I've always believed that small kindnesses matter, especially in a city that can feel so cold despite its tropical heat. That's why I keep an extra umbrella wedged between my seat and the door panel. It's nothing fancy, just a simple black umbrella with a wooden handle, but it's saved more than a few souls from getting drenched over the years. Sometimes it's a student who forgot theirs at home. Sometimes it's an elderly person whose umbrella broke in the wind. I never ask for it back. The way I see it, if someone needs it more than I do, it's theirs. My wife Maria used to tease me about it, calling me São Carlos like I was some kind of saint. I'd always laugh and tell her I was just practical. But the truth was, after losing our daughter to illness 5 years ago, these small acts of giving away umbrellas felt like the only way I knew how to keep fighting against the cruelty of the world. The bus stop at Avenida Paulista was coming up, one of the last before the terminal. Through the rain-blurred windshield, I could barely make out a figure huddled under the shelter, just a dark shape against the glow of the streetlights. I slowed down, the air brakes hissing as I pulled to the curb. The door folded open with its familiar mechanical groan, and cold rain misted into the bus, carrying with it the smell of wet asphalt and exhaust fumes. She stood there in the doorway, a girl who couldn't have been more than 16, maybe 17. Her clothes were soaked through, a thin jacket that offered no real protection against the storm, and her dark hair was plastered to her face in wet streaks. But it was her eyes that stopped me cold, wide and terrified, darting past me to check the mirrors, the street behind, the shadows between the buildings. She was shaking, and not just from the cold. "Por favor," she whispered, her voice so quiet I almost didn't hear it over the rain hammering on the roof. She glanced behind her again, then back at me, and that's when she said it. The words that would change everything about this ordinary Tuesday night. "He's following me in a silver car. If I don't get on, he'll take me back." The sentence hit me like a fist to the chest. I've heard a lot in 17 years of driving. People arguing on phones, couples breaking up in the back seats, drunk passengers confessing their regrets. But this was different. This was a child, terrified, asking for help in the only way she knew how, trusting that a stranger behind a steering wheel might be her only way out. I should have called the police right then. That's what the manual says, what the training videos tell you to do. Don't get involved. Alert the authorities. Protect yourself and your other passengers. But manuals don't account for the look in a 16-year-old's eyes when she's genuinely afraid for her life. They don't account for the fact that my own daughter would have been about this age if she'd lived. "Get on," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Take a seat in the middle, away from the windows." She practically fell up the steps, fumbling with coins, but I waved her off. "Don't worry about it, just sit down." As she moved toward the middle of the bus, I caught a glimpse in my side mirror, a silver sedan idling about 3 car lengths behind us, engine running, headlights cutting through the rain. My heart rate kicked up a notch. The girl hadn't been lying. I closed the doors and pulled back into traffic, my mind racing faster than the windshield wipers. Through the rearview mirror, I watched her collapse into a seat, arms wrapped around herself, still shaking. The other passengers barely glanced up from their phones. A middle-aged woman in a nurse's uniform sat near the front, earbuds in. 2 young men in the back were half asleep. An elderly man with a cane occupied a priority seat, staring blankly out the window. The silver car followed. I've driven through protests, through floods, through that time someone tried to rob the bus with a fake gun. But this felt different. This was personal. This was a child who'd whispered a plea for help, and now I was responsible for what happened next. My hands tightened on the steering wheel, knuckles going white. At the next stop, the elderly man with the cane slowly made his way to the front. As he passed me, he paused, glanced at the girl, then at me. His eyes were sharp despite his age, and he gave me the slightest nod before stepping off into the rain. Sometimes you can just tell when someone understands what's happening without a word being spoken. Now we were down to 4, the girl, the nurse, the 2 young men, and me. The silver car was still there, maintaining its distance, a predator waiting for the right moment. I reached for the radio handset, the one that connects directly to the dispatch center. My hand hovered over it for a moment. If I called this in, they'd send police, but they might also tell me to pull over and wait. That could take minutes, maybe longer in this weather, and minutes could be all the difference. The girl had chosen to get on this bus because she thought it was her escape. If I stopped now, if I pulled over and waited, that silver car would know exactly where we were, sitting ducks in a metal box. Instead, I made a decision that probably violated a dozen company policies and could cost me my job. I picked up the handset and radioed my friend Roberto, another driver who I knew would be finishing his shift about now, probably already at the terminal. "Roberto, it's Carlos on 847, I said quietly, my voice low enough that the passengers couldn't hear over the rain and engine noise. "I need a favor, and I need you not to ask questions yet." There was a pause, then his voice crackled back. "What's going on, brother?" "I'm going to change my route. I need you to call the police and tell them to meet me at the Igreja da Consolação in 15 minutes. Tell them it's urgent, protective custody situation, possible child abduction attempt. Silver sedan license plate." I squinted into the mirror, trying to make out the numbers through the rain and darkness. "I can't see it clearly. Just tell them silver sedan following bus 847. "Carlos, what?" "Please, Roberto, trust me. 15 minutes, Igreja da Consolação." Okay, I'm calling now. Be careful." I hung up the handset and took a deep breath. The Igreja da Consolação was about 12 minutes away if I took the normal route, but I could stretch it to 15 by taking a slightly longer path through the Jardins neighborhood. The church was always busy, even at night, with people coming and going, lights, visibility. If I was wrong about the girl, if this was some kind of misunderstanding, I'd look like an idiot. But if I was right, and I was pretty sure I was right, those extra minutes could save her life. Through the rear-view mirror, I watched the girl. She had pressed herself against the window, trying to see if the car was still following, then catching herself and shrinking back. Her hands were clasped so tightly together that her knuckles had gone pale. Every few seconds, she'd look toward me, as if checking that I was still there, that this was real, that she was actually moving away from whatever horror she was fleeing. I took the next left instead of continuing straight, veering off my usual route. The silver car followed. The nurse in the front seat looked up, confused. "Motorista, this isn't the normal way," she said, pulling out one earbud. "Construction detour," I lied smoothly, the words coming easier than I expected. "They've got Paulista blocked up ahead. This'll get us to the terminal, just takes a few extra minutes." She seemed to accept this and settled back into her seat, though I caught her glancing at the girl. Women notice things, especially women who've spent years taking care of people. I could see the concern forming in her eyes, the way she studied the girl's wet clothes, the shaking, the fear. The bus rumbled through the rain-slicked streets of São Paulo, past shuttered shops and glowing apartment windows, past restaurants closing up for the night and bars just starting to fill. The city's rhythm continued around us, oblivious to the small drama playing out inside this bus. A traffic light turned red and I eased to a stop, watching the silver car pull up 2 vehicles behind. I couldn't see the driver clearly, just a silhouette. Masculine, shoulders hunched forward as if he was searching, hunting. The light turned green. I accelerated slowly, deliberately taking my time, trying to think through every possibility. What if the car tried to cut us off? What if he realized where we were heading? What if the police didn't make it in time? The umbrella wedged beside my seat suddenly felt like a ridiculous, inadequate shield against the danger stalking us through the rain. "Excuse me, Señor Motorista." A small voice from behind me. The girl had moved closer, still keeping low but trying to catch my attention without alerting the other passengers. "Is he still there?" I caught her eyes in the rearview mirror and nodded once, slightly. Her face crumpled for just a second before she forced it back into a mask of control. 16 years old and already having to learn how to hide her terror. My chest ached. "What's your name?" I asked quietly, loud enough for her to hear but not the others. "Beatrice," she whispered. "Beatrice, I need you to stay calm for about 12 more minutes, okay? Can you do that for me?" She nodded, though I could see tears mixing with the rainwater on her face. "Good. I'm Carlos, and I promise you, you're going to be safe. We're going somewhere with lots of people, lots of lights, and help is already on the way." "He's my stepfather," she said suddenly, the words tumbling out in a desperate rush. "He said if I told anyone about what he's been doing, he'd make sure my mom believed him instead of me. Tonight I couldn't take it anymore, so I ran. I've been trying to get away all evening, but he keeps finding me. I thought if I got on a bus, if I kept moving, maybe I could get somewhere safe, somewhere with people. But he just keeps following." My hands tightened on the wheel again, rage and sorrow warring in my chest. I've heard these stories before, read them in newspapers, seen them on the evening news. But hearing it directly, from a child whose voice shook with suppressed trauma, it hit differently. It made it impossible to look away, to pretend it wasn't my problem. "Beatrice, listen to me carefully," I said, keeping my voice as steady as I could manage. "In about 10 minutes, we're going to arrive at a church. There will be people there and there will be police. When we stop, I need you to stay on the bus until the police arrive. Don't get off before then, understand? Even if he tries to approach, you stay on this bus with me. The doors only open when I say they open." She nodded again, and I could see some of the tension in her shoulders ease slightly. Having a plan, even a simple one, seemed to help her regain a measure of control. The nurse had definitely noticed our conversation now. She was watching both of us, and I saw her gaze flick to the rear window, then back to Beatrice, then to me. She was putting it together, reading the situation, and I could tell from her expression that she understood exactly what was happening. She stood up slowly, moved to sit closer to Beatrice, and without saying a word, draped her own dry jacket over the girl's shoulders. "It's cold," was all she said, but her eyes met mine in the mirror, and I saw the solidarity there. She wasn't going to let anything happen to this girl either. The two young men in the back were still oblivious, thank God. Sometimes ignorance is a blessing. The fewer people who knew what was happening, the less likely panic would spread, the more control I could maintain over the situation. We turned onto Rua Augusta, the streetlights reflecting off the wet pavement like scattered jewels. The silver car was still there, a constant presence in my mirrors. 3 car lengths back, I could feel my heart hammering against my ribs, adrenaline making my hands shake slightly on the wheel. 7 more minutes. Just 7 more minutes. A motorcycle cut in front of me, and I had to brake harder than I wanted to, the bus lurching slightly. Beatrice grabbed the seat in front of her, steadying herself. I muttered an apology, though I doubt she heard it over the rain. The silver car had to brake too, and for a moment the headlights grew brighter in my mirrors before falling back to their usual distance. 5 minutes. "Carlos," Roberto's voice crackled over the radio. "Police are on their way, ETA 5 to 6 minutes to the church. They said to keep the girl on the bus and keep moving until they arrive. Don't stop anywhere else. You understand?" "Understood," I replied, feeling a wave of relief wash through me. We were going to make this. We were actually going to make this. But the universe has a way of testing your faith right when you think you're safe. As we passed the entrance to Consolacion Cemetery, the silver car suddenly accelerated, pulling into the lane beside us. I could see the driver now, a man in his 40s, face contorted with anger, gesturing at me to pull over, to stop the bus. He was yelling something, though I couldn't hear it through the rain and the closed windows. Beatrice saw him too. She let out a small, strangled sound and pressed herself against the nurse, who immediately wrapped an arm around her, protective and fierce. "Don't stop," the nurse said firmly, her voice carrying authority from years of dealing with emergencies. "Don't you dare stop this bus." I had no intention of stopping. I kept my speed steady, ignoring the man in the silver car, my eyes fixed on the road ahead. The church was visible now, its illuminated spire cutting through the rain, a beacon of safety just 3 more blocks away. The man in the car continued to gesture wildly, even trying to swerve slightly toward the bus. But he couldn't do much in traffic, not without causing an accident himself. 2 blocks. I could see the church plaza now, and my heart soared when I spotted the flashing blue and red lights of police cars already parked outside. Roberto must have given them enough information to send a car immediately. Thank God. Thank God for good friends and quick responses, and the small miracles that happen when people choose to help instead of look away. The man in the silver car saw the police lights too. I watched in my mirror as his expression changed from anger to panic. He slammed on his brakes and swerved into a side street, tires squealing on the wet pavement, disappearing into the maze of São Paulo's streets like the coward he was. Part of me wanted to chase him, to make sure he couldn't hurt anyone else, but my priority was the girl trembling in the middle of my bus. I pulled up to the church plaza and opened the doors. 2 police officers immediately boarded, a man and a woman, both young but professional, their uniforms dark with rain. The female officer went straight to Beatrice while her partner approached me. "You're the driver who called this in?" he asked. "My friend called for me," I explained quickly. "The girl got on my bus at Paulista, said a man in a silver car was following her trying to take her back. Stepfather. She said he's been hurting her. The car followed us the whole way here, tried to force me to stop about 2 blocks back, but then he saw your lights and took off down a side street." The officer was already radioing in the description, calling for units to search the area. Meanwhile, his partner had coaxed Beatrice to the front of the bus. The nurse came too, still keeping her jacket around the girl's shoulders, refusing to leave until she knew the child would be properly taken care of. "Beatrice, is that right?" the female officer was saying gently. "My name is Officer Silva. You're safe now. We're going to take you somewhere warm and dry, and you're going to tell us everything that happened, okay? And then we're going to make sure that man can never hurt you again." Beatrice nodded, tears streaming freely now, the dam of her composure finally breaking now that she was surrounded by people whose job was to protect her. She looked back at me, her eyes red and swollen, and mouthed 2 words. "Thank you." I nodded back, not trusting my voice, that familiar burn in my throat that meant I was close to crying myself. The 2 young men in the back had finally woken up to what was happening, staring wide-eyed at the police officers and the crying girl. The nurse gave me a knowing look as she helped Beatrice off the bus, a look that said she understood exactly what I'd risked, what I'd done, and that she approved completely. Within minutes, Beatrice was safely inside a police car, wrapped in blankets, being driven to a station where victim support services would take over. A social worker would be called. Her mother would be contacted and informed. The stepfather would be found and arrested. The machinery of justice, imperfect as it is, would begin to turn. Officer Silva returned to the bus one more time before they left. "That was brave, what you did," she said quietly, "and smart, keeping her moving, bringing her somewhere public. A lot of drivers would have just called it in and pulled over, and honestly, that might have ended very badly. You probably saved her life tonight." "I just did what anyone should do," I replied, but we both knew that wasn't true. Most people don't get involved. Most people look the other way, tell themselves it's not their problem, that surely someone else will handle it. I'd chosen differently, and maybe that did make a difference. She handed me a card with a case number. "We'll need a full statement from you, probably tomorrow. But for tonight, you should finish your route and go home. Get some rest. You look exhausted." I realized I was exhausted. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving behind a bone-deep weariness that made my arms feel like lead. I nodded, took the card, and watched as the police cars pulled away, their lights painting the rain-soaked streets in alternating blue and red. The nurse was the last to leave. Before she got off, she paused at the door and turned back to me. "My daughter is about that girl's age," she said simply. "If something like that ever happened to her, I'd pray she'd find someone like you. Someone who gives a damn." Then she stepped off into the rain, opening her umbrella and disappearing into the night. I sat there for a moment alone in the bus, listening to the rain drum on the metal roof, the engine idling, the windshield wipers still beating their steady rhythm. My hands were shaking now, the aftermath of fear and adrenaline finally catching up with me. I looked down at the extra umbrella, still wedged beside my seat, and almost laughed at the absurdity of it. I'd been so focused on the girl that I'd forgotten to offer her the umbrella. But then again, what she'd needed wasn't protection from the rain. She'd needed protection from something far more dangerous. I picked up the radio handset one more time. "Roberto, it's Carlos. The girl is safe. Police have her. Thank you, brother. Thank you for trusting me. Always, Carlos. Always. Now get your ass back to the terminal before they dock your pay for being late." I did laugh then, a short, exhausted bark of laughter that felt good despite everything. I put the bus in gear and pulled back onto the street, heading toward the terminal, the church's illuminated spire growing smaller in my mirrors. The rain was finally starting to ease, the clouds beginning to break apart, revealing glimpses of stars between the storm fronts. The terminal was quiet when I arrived, most of the other drivers already gone for the night. I parked the bus in its designated spot, shut down the engine, and went through the motions of filling out my shift report. Under incidents, I wrote simply, "Police called to assist passenger. Full statement to be provided tomorrow. See case number attached." I didn't mention the detour, the changed route, the fact that I'd essentially commandeered a public transit vehicle for my own purposes. That conversation could wait for tomorrow, when I'd inevitably be called into the supervisor's office. Roberto was waiting for me in the break room, 2 cups of coffee already poured. He handed me one without a word, and we sat in silence for a few minutes, the only sound the drip of the coffee maker and the distant rumble of buses coming and going. "So," he finally said, "you going to tell me what that was about?" I told him everything, from the moment Beatrice stepped onto the bus to the moment the police drove her away. He listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker as I described the stepfather, the fear in the girl's eyes, the way she'd whispered her plea for help. "Cristo," he muttered when I finished. "Carlos, you know they're probably going to write you up for this, right? Changing your route without authorization, not calling it in immediately through proper channels, putting other passengers at risk." "I know," I said, "and I'd do it again in a heartbeat." He smiled then, tired but genuine. "Yeah, I figured you would. That's why I called the police when you asked. No questions. Because I know you, brother. You don't make these calls lightly." We finished our coffee in companionable silence. My shift was over, but I found myself reluctant to leave, to go home and face the emptiness of my apartment, the memories that waited there. Maria had passed away 2 years after our daughter, cancer taking her as swiftly and mercilessly as the illness that had taken little Anna. Some nights the apartment felt less like a home and more like a mausoleum of everything I'd lost. But tonight felt different. Tonight I'd been given the chance to save someone, not to bring back the dead, not to undo the cruelties of the past, but to make a real, tangible difference in the present. Beatrice was alive. She was safe. Whatever healing she needed to do, whatever journey lay ahead for her, at least she would have the chance to take it. That had to count for something. I gathered my things, the extra umbrella tucked under my arm, and headed for the exit. Roberto walked me out, both of us stepping into the now gentle drizzle the storm finally spent. "Hey, Carlos," he called as I reached my car. "You're a good man. Don't let the bosses make you forget that tomorrow, okay?" "I'll try," I promised. The drive home took me through familiar streets, the city settling into its late-night rhythm, the rain now just a light mist that caught the streetlights like fog. I thought about Beatrice, wondered where she was right now, if she was warm, if someone was sitting with her, if she felt safe. I hoped so. God. I hoped so. When I finally pulled into my building's parking garage, I sat in the car for a moment, engine ticking as it cooled, just breathing, just being. My phone buzzed, a text message from an unknown number. I opened it, curious. Officer Silva gave me your number. I hope that's okay. I just wanted to say thank you again. You saved my life tonight. I don't know if I'll ever be able to repay you, but I'll never forget what you did. Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for caring. Beatrice. I stared at the message for a long time, tears blurring the words. She'd thanked me for seeing her. Not for saving her, though I supposed I had, but for seeing her, for recognizing her humanity, for choosing to care when it would have been so much easier to look away. In a city of 12 million people where it's easy to become invisible, to slip through the cracks, to suffer in silence, being seen can mean everything. I typed back a short response. You're going to be okay, Beatrice. It'll take time, but you're going to be okay. And you don't owe me anything. Just promise me you'll keep fighting, keep surviving, keep being brave. The world needs more people like you. As I rode the elevator up to my floor, exhaustion finally overtaking me, I thought about the umbrella in my hand, the one I'd forgotten to give her but hadn't needed to. Tomorrow I'd buy a new one to keep in the bus, ready for the next person who might need it. Because that's what we do, those of us who've lost everything and somehow kept going. We carry umbrellas for strangers. We stop when someone whispers for help. We refuse to become so hardened by our own pain that we can't see the pain of others. The next morning came too soon, harsh sunlight streaming through my bedroom window, the city already awake and humming with activity. I showered, dressed in clean clothes, and mentally prepared myself for the inevitable confrontation at work. Sure enough, my supervisor called me into his office before I could even sign in for my shift. "Carlos, have a seat," he said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. His expression was unreadable, somewhere between annoyed and concerned. "I got a very interesting report this morning about last night's events. Want to tell me your side?" I did, laying out everything just as I had for Roberto, holding nothing back. To his credit, my supervisor listened without interrupting, his fingers steepled under his chin, eyes never leaving my face. When I finished, he sighed deeply and leaned back in his chair. "Carlos, you know I should write you up for this. You violated protocol in about 6 different ways. You changed your route without authorization. You didn't follow proper procedure for emergency situations. You could have put other passengers at risk." "I know," I said simply. "I accept whatever consequences you decide." He studied me for a long moment, then shook his head slowly. "But I'm not going to write you up. You know why? Because I got a call this morning from the police department. Apparently the girl you helped last night, Beatrice, she gave a full statement. Her stepfather has been arrested and charged with multiple counts of abuse. The investigation has revealed that he's been hurting her for almost 2 years, and she was too terrified to tell anyone until last night. The police told me that if you hadn't done what you did, if you'd just followed protocol and pulled over, there's a very real chance he would have gotten to her before they could respond. So, no, I'm not writing you up. But Carlos, don't make a habit of going rogue, okay? You're one of my best drivers and I'd like to keep you around." Relief flooded through me, so intense it made me dizzy. "Thank you, sir. I won't. Now get out of here and drive your route. And Carlos, good job. Not in an official capacity, but between you and me, good job." I left his office feeling lighter than I had in years, the weight of potential consequences lifted, replaced by a quiet sense of pride. Not the loud, boastful kind, but the deep, steady kind that comes from knowing you did the right thing even when it was difficult. My route that day felt different somehow, the familiar streets and stops imbued with new meaning. Every passenger who boarded, I found myself really seeing them, not just as fares to collect, but as people with their own stories, their own struggles, their own need to be seen. The elderly woman with her shopping bags, struggling up the steps, I helped her find a seat. The student who dropped his bus pass in the rain, I picked it up and handed it back with a smile. The mother with 2 small children, one crying, the other exhausted. I turned the radio down so the kids could sleep. Small acts, maybe. Insignificant in the grand scheme of the city's daily chaos. But after last night, I understood more clearly than ever that small acts of kindness are never truly small. They ripple outward, touching lives in ways we might never know, creating moments of human connection in a world that often feels determined to keep us isolated. Days turned into weeks. The umbrella remained wedged beside my seat, replaced with a new one after I'd given away 3 more to passengers caught unprepared by São Paulo's unpredictable rain. Each time I handed one over, I thought of Beatrice, wondered how she was doing, whether she was healing, whether the world was being kinder to her now. Then, about a month after that rainy night, I got another text message. It was from the same number, Beatrice's number. "Hi, Carlos. I wanted to let you know that I'm doing okay. It's hard, and there's a lot of therapy, and my mom and I are still working things out, but I'm safe. I'm living with my aunt now, and I'm going back to school next week. I think about you sometimes, about that night, and I just want you to know that what you did changed everything for me. You showed me that there are still good people in the world, people who care about strangers, who choose kindness even when it's risky. I'm trying to be more like that. Thank you for being my example. Beatrice." I read the message 3 times, sitting in the driver's seat during my lunch break, a sandwich forgotten in my lap. She was okay. She was safe. She was trying to heal and grow and be kind to others. It was more than I dared to hope for. I texted back, "Beatrice, hearing that you're doing better is the best news I've gotten in a long time. Keep fighting, keep growing, keep being the brave person you are. And remember, you don't need to be like me or anyone else. Just be yourself, your best self. The world already has enough copies. It needs your unique light." That night, driving home after my shift, I took a detour past the Igreja da Consolação, past the plaza where police cars had waited with their flashing lights, where Beatrice had finally found safety after hours of fear. The church still stood there, illuminated against the night sky, a constant presence in the ever-changing city. I pulled over for a moment, just sat there looking at it, remembering. Maria and Anna were gone, their absence an ache that would never fully heal. But maybe, just maybe, I could honor their memories by continuing to be someone who cared, who helped, who refused to become numb to the suffering of others. Maybe that was the legacy I could leave behind, not in grand gestures or headlines, but in quiet moments of choosing to see people, to stop when someone whispered for help, to carry umbrellas for strangers. I thought about all the passengers who would board my bus in the years to come, each of them carrying their own burdens, fighting their own battles, surviving their own storms. I couldn't save them all. I couldn't fix the broken systems, the injustice, the cruelty that still existed in the world. But I could drive my route with attention and care. I could keep that extra umbrella wedged beside my seat. I could choose, every single day, to be someone who gave a damn. The city stretched out before me. 12 million stories unfolding simultaneously. 12 million chances for connection, for kindness, for small miracles. Tomorrow, I'd wake up and drive the same route again, the same stops, the same potholes, the same rhythms. But I'd do it differently now, with eyes more open, heart more willing, hands ready to reach out when needed. Because somewhere out there would be another Beatrice, another frightened soul whispering for help, trusting that a stranger might care enough to stop. And when that moment came, I wanted to be the kind of person who didn't hesitate, who didn't look away, who chose courage over comfort. I put the car in gear and pulled back onto the street, heading home through São Paulo's endless sprawl. The extra umbrella sat in the passenger seat, ready for tomorrow, ready for whoever might need it next. And somewhere in the city, a 16-year-old girl was sleeping safely, healing slowly, learning to trust again. That had to count for something. That had to mean something. It meant everything. This story is a work of fiction inspired by real events. Characters, specific circumstances, and certain details have been created for narrative purposes, but the themes of courage, kindness, and protecting those in need reflect genuine human experiences that happen every day in cities around the world. If this story touched your heart, If it reminded you of the power each of us has to make a difference in someone else's life, I invite you to subscribe to our channel. We share stories like this one, stories of everyday heroes, of small acts that create big changes, of people who choose kindness even when it's difficult. Join our community, and together, let's celebrate the good that still exists in this world, the connections that make us human, and the courage it takes to care about strangers. Hit that subscribe button, and let's continue this journey together.